Hey everyone, this is Nick from Casco Mountain Customs here in upstate New York. Thanks for checking out my first real YouTube video. I decided to start with a tutorial on how to make a small hugger style rear fender. I made one of these a couple of months ago for a project I had here in the shop. I posted up on Instagram. I mentioned that this is a cool little part that can be made with basic hand tools, and I got a lot of responses about that. A lot of questions on how I did it. How I did the beading detail in the center without a bead roller or pull max or anything like that. So we're going to work on that today. I don't have the bike in the shop anymore, but I do have the original simple pattern I used to make it, so we can make it the same size and everything like that. And what we're going to be working on today is aluminum. This is 3003 H14 aluminum. It's 80 thousandths thick, and I did anneal this piece. You don't necessarily have to, but it's going to make life a lot easier when it comes to forming it, especially doing the bead detail by hand. Alright, so let's get started. First thing I did off camera is I transferred the pattern onto the aluminum. Real simple, lay it on top, get a scribe, and go right through the paper, make some marks, light marks on the aluminum. Come behind with a Sharpie so you can see it and darken it in. Okay? So, the first thing that we're going to work on is the overall shape. We're going to shape this rear fender first, and then we'll put in the detail afterwards, the beading detail. So, you could do some tuck shrinking around the edge if you had a Lancaster style shrinker, like you could buy a Harbor Freight or Eastwood or something like that. There's obviously different grades, different qualities, but even the cheap ones work for something like this and save you a lot of time. But basically what needs to happen is the edge of the panel needs to be shrunk, or the center of the panel needs to be stretched. We need more surface area in the center than we have on the edges. So the way that we're going to do that is by stretching the center. I have a sandbag here on my work table. You need something sturdy. If you don't have a work table like this, a tree stump works really well. Anything like that sturdy that you can beat on. And we're going to be using simple teardrop shaped plastic mallet. You can get these from a lot of places. I think this one's from Eastwood. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to start stretching out the center of this panel. And I'm going to be working right through the center area. And I'm going to be staying off these edges. Okay? Alright, so let's get started on this overall shape. Imagination a little bit, you can see how we have our curve this way, and it already wants to start curving in a little bit this way. So when you're doing this, you want to make sure that your hammer strikes are relatively even. I'll generally go down the middle of the panel, then one right side, then the left side, and then fill it in. So after I make a series of blows, I'll come in a little bit lighter and just try to smooth it out. That'll help us out a little bit in the future. Make planishing out these marks not so bad. The more even we can keep it, the better. So we'll do a little bit more in here. We're starting this basic shape. I'm going to do a little bit more right near the middle of the panel and a little bit towards the edges a bit more, and we'll smooth it out a little bit, see where we're at. Something else to note that you could do is you could use a method called tuck shrinking. along these edges to help bring around the curve a little bit faster. For this video, I'm going to leave it out. We're going to primarily stretch. That's part of the reason I chose to use an 80 thousandths material as opposed to an 063 that would move a little bit easier. We're going to rely mostly on stretching for this video. Tuck shrinking, enormously helpful. It's a real basic technique if you want to get into metal shaping and start making more of your own panels. But for now, we'll stick to some basics. We'll keep stretching. So now that I have put some stretch into the center of this panel, increased the surface area in this area a little bit, I'm just going to smooth it out right here on the sandbag with the mallet a little bit, and then we'll grab a dolly and a body hammer and start taking out some of these lumps we put in the panel, and we'll see where we're at. Alright, so I have a couple of dollies here that we could try to use to get this smoothed out. Alright, so first one, this is a post dolly. You can lock this into a vise, which is really nice. You don't have to hold it, gives you a good working area, and you can lock this in the vise and work on that. You might not have one of those. Those are a little bit less common to just find around. This is a real basic shape auto body dolly. I bought this one and this hammer from like a local auto parts store years ago, and they're Bondo branded. I don't know who made them, but I've had them forever and I just like them, especially the hammer. I don't know why. I've just always liked it. So the other thing I have here is this is a Martin dolly. This is a real useful shape. You know, if you're only going to have a couple of dollies, this is one I would recommend. You could order these online from a few different places, but this is really helpful. So we might be using this one too. But we'll start with this one. The biggest thing when selecting a dolly to use for your project is you want one that's going to fit the overall shape of what you're making the best. That's going to give you the most surface area to work with when you're hammering on top and allow you to really shape your panel appropriately. So, what we're going to try today in a simple way. Let's just take our dolly, stick it right in the middle of the sandbag, let the sandbag support it, and then we're going to be placing our panel on top and hammering directly on the dolly and using that method to smooth out the lumps that we put in before with the mallet doing our stretching. This will also add a little bit of stretch to the panel through planishing this out. So let's do a round of that and see how it goes. We'll do another round of stretching, the same area. We're going to do the same thing over again, get some more shape out of it. Let's get to it. Okay, so we'll planish this out again quick. It's a little tedious doing over and over again, but it pays off. If you just go to town, really hammering on it, really stretching it out without stopping and planish in the middle, you'll make such a mess that when it comes time to planish by hand, you're going to regret it. So let's get back to it. Okay, so let's get going on another round of stretching using the mallet, and then I'm going to planche out again just like we did, except the difference is here is I'm going to start working my way out a little bit towards the edges with the planching. So what we need to do is gradually bring a little bit of shape out towards these edges, and that's going to take up the excess material that's creating this rippling effect, and it's going to give our fender that nice smooth shape that we're looking for. So let's get started on that. So just that little bit of work, we can compare sides. This side I haven't planched towards the edge at all. You can see the waviness. There's a lot of material there. And it's all bunching up, it's got no place to go. You can see on this side, start planching just a little bit towards that edge lightly. We don't want to move too much material because then we're going to lose shape in this area. But just a little bit. And I'm giving that excess material some place to go by continuing the curve around. Now you see we have a nice smooth transition. Starting to look like something. So let's do it on this side. Shape on this side. Shape on this side. Let's see, it's starting to look like a fender. So we'll do a little bit of work up in here. Same thing that we did on the sides. We'll work out these ripples. Try to get a nice curve. Alright, tweak it more later, but looking pretty good. So the next step will be, let's work out some of these hammer marks. This is the slapper I'm going to use for this. I made this one. It's just out of standard file. Works really well. Just heat it up, bend it into a handle, sand it down, nice smooth surface. So now, I'm going to show you guys how to pick out the high spots and low spots, because we'll do just a little bit of metal finishing on this before we get into making this bead detail. It'll be a lot easier to do it now in some of these areas before I move on to the bead. When I grabbed some die cam, layout fluid, machinist die, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to use a standard bastard file like you could buy any hardware store. Die-cam also comes in spray too, and I do have that. That works really well sometimes. But sometimes for these smaller panels, I just like to apply it kind of by hand. So what I'll do is sometimes I'll just put some on just like this. And I'll grab a paper towel. Just spread it out a little bit. I don't need it super dark. I just need a little bit of color on it. So it's going to show me where our high spots and low spots are as we start the metal finishing. So we're going to scrape the file across the panel. Our goal isn't really to remove material. It's going to show us our high spots and our low spots. And because the file is flat, and sturdy, it's not going to contour the panel. It's going to skate over top and it's going to show us everything. So we'll see what that looks like. Now I'm hoping the camera picks this up, but you can see all the little lows on the hammer marks and all the little high spots. Set up a little post dolly here in my vise. All this is a piece of steel tube, a little set screw I put in there, and I use the lower dies from my pneumatic planching hammer in here. The reason why I had to go to this is if we want to planch this out smooth, we're going to need a dolly that really fits the contour perfectly in order to get the surface as smooth as possible. Now, to be honest, if you're doing this at home, you're a hobbyist, you continue with the dollies like we had before, you know, if you only have one or two, bring it as far as you can go, get all the major highs out and low spots out, do the best you can. You get to this point, you can sand this panel smooth. We start with 80 thousandths material, even where we stretched it is plenty thick. These hammer strikes are no more than a thousandth or two deep. You could grab a sanding disc, a sanding block or your DA sander and smooth this right out and have a beautiful panel. Now I glossed over hammer and dolly techniques. Maybe that's a good future video. It's called metal bumping, where we're either hammering directly on top of the dolly or off of the dolly to move material around. But for the sake of this video, we'll just leave it as I'm going to mostly be doing hammer on in the low spots. Okay, so you can see the little blue low spots and smaller. Let's do a little more work in the area and we'll try again. I'm going to continue that exact process around the perimeter. Okay, so this side of the fender is actually feeling really good, really smooth. Most of these that you can see, you can hardly even feel. There's a little bit of a ripple in it right here. Let's hit it real quick in one direction with the 120 grit paper, and this will give us a good look at where we're at finish-wise. So while the battery is charging, I went ahead and I jumped over to the other side and got the other side finished out pretty good using the exact same method, the slapper file, and then I hit it with the 120 grit paper on the sanding block. But I stopped on this side immediately when the camera died because I want to show everyone how to finish out this side completely. I decided, you know, we'll just bring it all the way to a roughly brushed finish. Just so you can see how that looks. So let's get back onto this side. Actually, I was in the middle of brushing it, I think, when the battery died. So let's see how it looks with just a light hit. Getting all the marks pretty much going in one direction allows the light to bounce off it pretty well also, and gives you a good idea of where you're at. The file is really good, I find, for picking up all the low spots, but having it sanded and dressed a little bit, I feel like allows me to get a better view of the overall shape, and when I run my hand along it, I can feel imperfections much easier. So it's getting close. Just some minor low spots, you can hardly even feel those. A little bit of a rippling in the panel, which happens a lot. So let's keep going, we'll get it finished up. And then once we get this all finished out, we'll move on to our center detail. Okay, go straight to sandpaper again. So it's looking like most of this section is pretty much good to go. A little bit more work to do down here, and a little bit more up in here, and then I think we'll call that good. So we have this panel looking pretty good. All the low spots been brought up, the high spots been evened out. We have a nice even radius going front and back and side to side. So looking good. So we're ready to put in the center beading detail. If you were doing this project and you didn't want the center bead detail, or you weren't ready to tackle that yet, you're pretty much good to go on your rear fender. Finish out the center section just like we did on the sides, make sure everything's nice and even, and you're ready for whatever kind of finish you want to put on it. You can leave it brushed, you can bring it all the way up to a polished finish, just sand it out. Just make sure when you sand it out, if you're going for a mirror polish, you want to get rid of all the previous scratches. So right now, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but there's still a little bit of file marks in there. So I would sand it with the 120 till those file marks disappear, and then 220, 320, 400, and then you'd be ready to jump on the buffer. But you can see we have nice even light reflection. Not really showing any major ripples. There's none that I can feel. So we're looking good. Ready to move on. Alright, so I think I'm going to cut this video here. I want to do it all in one video, but it's getting a little long, I think. So thank you if you made it this far. I understand this isn't the most exciting stuff, but if you made it this far, I know you're interested in learning some new skills. So we'll pick up the beading detail in part 2. I'm going to get started working on that right now, so hopefully there won't be a big delay in releasing these videos. I hope to do it at the same time. We'll see how it goes. But if you liked it, if you enjoyed this so far, subscribe to the YouTube channel, tell your friends. Check out some of my Instagram posts if you're new. I've done some how-to tutorials on the Instagram, some photos, some write-ups. And feel free to comment. If there's anything I glossed over that you didn't quite understand, anything you'd like me to cover maybe in a future video, let me know. Post up, and I'll see you in part 2.